Bobby, thank you so much for being here. And one of the things that I always took from Charlie was this idea that we needed to grow the coalition and expand the coalition. There's probably no person in the entire administration who better exemplifies that than you, one of the leading consumer advocates, health advocates that has existed in our country, but until a few years ago, more aligned, given your name. You were a scion of one of the great political families on the Democratic side in American history. But now you're one of the most important members of the administration in a Republican administration. Maybe talk, if you would, just a little bit about Charlie's approach to politics and how it ultimately made you one of the most important people in the federal government.
Yeah, well, Charlie was probably the primary architect of my unification with President Trump. I actually announced my endorsement of President Trump, which was his idea. And he was, for people who were there, remember it, there was all these kind of fireworks and sparklers on the stage when we shook hands, and that was all Charlie's orchestration. That was his idea, and he insisted on that. But I first met Charlie in July of 2021. I had just written a book about Anthony Fauci, and he had me on his show for this very, very wide-ranging interview in which he really let me talk a lot, which was unusual at that time because I was not allowed to talk on most outlets.
Sure.
And I think both of us approached each other with some trepidation because we came from such different places. By the end of that interview, I felt like I'd met a spiritual soulmate, and our friendship blossomed after that. And even during the campaign, when he was strongly supporting President Trump, we always had a communication and outreach. And then after I made the endorsement, I saw him all the time, and he helped me a lot during the transition.
Yep.
As did you, as did Tucker, and helped a lot. Amaryllis, who's my daughter-in-law, he really to get the job that she has today. So, the thing that united us was his total commitment to free speech. And now it had been a theme of my campaign. I had been subject to censorship like so many other people during COVID, and saw the threat that it was to our country, so that once they understood, they could censor us. And Charlie and I talked about this, that the founders put the freedom of speech in the First Amendment because they knew all the other rights depended on it. If a government can silence its opponents, it has a license for any kind of atrocity. And, as soon as they realized that we were going to put up with that, they went after freedom of assembly, which is in the First Amendment, with social distancing regulations. They went after freedom of religion, closing all the churches in this country, which is extraordinary. It's extraordinary that we let get away with that. And by the way, they kept the liquor stores open as essential businesses. They went after the Fifth Amendment. They shut all of our businesses, 3.5 million businesses, with no due process, no just compensation. They went after the Seventh Amendment right to jury trial. Seventh Amendment says no American shall be denied the right of a trial before a jury of his peers. In case there are controversies exceeding $25, there's no pandemic exception. And yet they were able to give these broad categories of industry, these exemptions from any litigation, no matter how much they hurt you. They went after the Fourth Amendment prohibitions against warrantless searches and seizures by making us disclose our medical information. So the entire Constitution came under attack as soon as they realized that they could go after free speech.
So we have 80 seconds left on radio, and then we'll continue streaming for the folks who are watching live on the internet and other platforms. But to talk to me just a little bit about Charlie's influence in actually politically getting you to be the H&HS secretary, because I remember he was such a strong advocate for you. He was so proud of the president and of you when the president nominated you. Obviously, like all of our big nominees, there was a tough confirmation fight. Just give us 50 seconds on how important he was to making you have the position and the title you have right now.
Well, you know what the transition is like. You never kind of know what's going to happen. And he was a critical ally for me in calling President Trump. And at first, when President Trump asked me whether I wanted this job, I was tentative. I didn't know whether I wanted to handle the Medicaid and Medicare portion, which is the biggest, economic behemoth.
Sure.
And he really persuaded me that I should do it. And then he helped me not only making calls to the president himself, but telling me people that I should call. So operating strategically. But I'll just say one other thing before we sign.
So let me pause there, Bobby. This will continue on streaming. But for those listening on radio, I want to thank the secretary. And again, we'll keep on going for another few minutes off the radio, but appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now that we're, I guess, off radio, keep talking about this piece of it, because
I think
he was strategically brilliant, and he was a good political operator in a way that I think so many people don't realize.
Yeah, he was. He was an impresario strategist. And he knew exactly, he did the same thing with Amaryllis. He told her, make this phone call, make this phone call, make this one first, this one second.
Yep.
And he knew exactly, he understood the uses of power. And he understood what buttons needed to be pushed to move the ball across the goal line. So he was very good on that. So he was a pragmatist, but he was also one of the most idealistic people that I've ever met.
He was.
And his principal preoccupation was with conversation. He thought conversation was the only thing that could heal our country. We have all these forces, and particularly the algorithms now in social media, that are driving us apart. And it's inexorable. There seems to be nothing that could stop it. And he understood that the only thing that could bridge that gap was debate, was open debate, and that censorship was the enemy of that. And that in order to have real conversations, we had to end the vitriol. We had to stop being poisonous toward each other. We need to say what we mean without saying it mean.
Yes.
And he was just amazingly, he was so respectful of the people who disagreed with him. He gave them the most respect and the greatest hearing. He wanted their voices to be heard. I saw on, one of the networks just now that there's this big revolt against social media because of their contribution to the polarization that ultimately led to his death, this brewing up of hatred. Ironically, I think Charlie would revolt against that.
Yes.
Because he hated censorship.
Yes.
What he said is the answer is conversation and dialogue, and we need to learn to do that if our democracy is going to survive. If we're going to survive, we need to talk to each other, even though all these things are telling us not to.
Yeah. So I talked to Charlie. It was either the night of or the day after our debate with Tim Walz, and he was excited. He told me how great I did, and obviously it's awesome to hear from a friend who tells you that you did a great job. But he asked what I thought of Tim. And I said, honestly, because you get in this sort of bunker mentality in the campaign, it's us versus them. And I was like, honestly, even though I'm glad that I think I did well, and I certainly don't want this guy to become vice president, I actually kind of liked him afterwards, after 90 minutes of talking with him. And Charlie said, that's why I do all these debates. It's like you can disagree vehemently with somebody, but if you're actually communicating with them, it's really hard not to appreciate at least a little bit. As a human being, even if you think they're 100% wrong on the issues, you can appreciate them a little bit as a human being, and that's what Charlie was so good at. So with all respect to you and all gratitude for being such a big part of his life the last couple of years, Bobby, good to see you.
You too, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you.